Right, okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to the new week. Okay, so as usual, we'll be jumping into the market, sharing with you the outlook for the week itself, and update you in terms of any opportunities that are worth noting. Okay, so quick one here. Let's take a look at the overview of the week. This week here, we have a couple of high impact news coming in that is tradable. Okay, the first one over here is going to be tomorrow. Okay, where we have the Canadian CPI data, both the month-on-month data as well as the year-on-year coming in. Okay, of course, at the same time here, we also have the retail sales coming in. But personally, I'm gonna be more of like focusing on the Canadian side on the CPI. Okay, that's definitely news tradable, right? Which means that if you are familiar with news trading strategy, capitalizing on the surprise element, the short-term volatility of the news itself, that's something that you can actually trade off. Okay. And then on Wednesday we have the pound CPI, so that's going to be happening in the afternoon, of course. So again, it's tradable. Okay, for the pound side of things. For those of you interested, and then going off into Thursday, we have a couple of euro data, of course, ECB statement here as well. The pound climate count change, which is the AKA NFP for the UK side of things. And then ending off the week on Friday, we have the Canadian retail sales. Okay, so for me, what's news tradable is definitely the Canadian CPI. That's definitely going to be my top priority. The pound CPI is definitely something that we can look out for as well. I'll be looking out and see, if during that period of time, if I'm actually in front of my computer, I'll be trading it. But for tomorrow's Canadian CPI, definitely trading that, right? So that's definitely the top priority, very very tradable. Okay. ECB side of things, I wouldn't be trading. Okay. I wouldn't be trading rate statement. Okay. I wouldn't be trading press conferences. But just bear that in mind because that might create some volatility in the euro side of things. Okay. Then of course, core retail sales in terms of CAT side of things, depending on how the deviation of the actual data is going to be. If it's not huge, then of course it's not tradable. But sometimes if you have huge deviation, then we may catch that. Okay, so really depending on how you're gonna prioritize, right? For me, definitely CPI top priority. Okay, good. So with that said, let's jump into the charts here and take a look at a couple of outlook over here. Okay, some of this are shaping up pretty nicely, I would say. Some of them, are starting to give us some clarity. Okay, some of them are opportunities available within the week. Okay, so first up, dollar index over here. We did see the dollar actually came down quite a bit. Okay, so overall you can see I've actually zoomed out quite a bit because I want to show you the overall structure of things, right? So we have this here as a first W, right? Then a pullback, X, and then right now we're kind of expecting a tree wave to complete the third move. Okay, gonna complete the cycle here of a WXY, at the same time a channel structure. Okay. So this is something that may need a little bit of patience, but we are seeing very very clear structure. In other words, if we can get a pullback, okay, something like that, then we'll look out for one more sell trade itself. Okay, so kind of utilize a little bit of a tool here to duplicate. Okay, let's just say for example something like that. That's what we're gonna expect over here, right? So that's gonna be a very nice little kind of like equal move of things. Okay, so keep an eye on the dollar index. Of course, if you're looking at shorter term perspective, can you trade the pullback? Definitely, right? Just bear in mind that perhaps if you're trading pullback, just be cautious that you're doing a little bit of a counter trend on the short term. Okay, so if you flip that into the euro dollar side of things, it's kind of like pretty similar, right? So we're kind of expecting the pullback here. Right, so we have this as a cycle, right? And then after that, we're expecting the completion of this three-way cycle as well, and the channel pattern. Okay, so of course, can you trade a pullback? Answer is definitely yes, right? And of course, if I start to zoom in a little bit, okay, depending on how aggressive you are in potentially looking for the trade on the pullback, okay, you may actually get a breakout trade on a lower time frame, perhaps on a H1 here. bringing in the RSI indicator, you can start to see the divergence building up. Okay, so of course, if you are pretty aggressive, you can look for the break of this, and then you stop above. Then of course you target here depending on how much you want to aim for. You can go for the 50%. That will give you about 1:1.7. The alternative view on this is if you're a bit more conservative and you're interested in trading the pullback, okay, you can actually wait for the price to break this low first, and then wait for the pullback to get involved in the sell. Okay, so that might actually give you even a slightly better risk to reward ratio. Okay, so it doesn't mean that if you jump into the trade earlier, you definitely get a better trade, right? Sometimes it's worth to be patient, okay, and wait for the pullback after the confirmation. But of course, you also need to give the idea or the thought that this may actually break and the pullback may actually not trigger your end trade. Maybe there's going to be a little bit of pullback, but a shadow one, and the market just continue the momentum, right? So that's very possible as well. Okay, so each of the aggression, whether you are aggressive entry, conservative entry, will naturally have its pros and cons. Okay, but definitely in the short run, for those of you interested in some kind of a counter trend pullback trade, there is an opportunity building into that. Okay, if you're more of a swing style, then just wait for the pullback and then look for the buy trade to the upside. Okay, GBP USD over here, pretty similar to the euro, but of course, the lower time frame here, the structure is slightly different. This one doesn't really kind of have the crawl structure, but perhaps more of a double top-ish formation. Okay, but overall, both the euro and the pound pretty much similar. Short term here, we're looking at a potential pullback. Okay, but overall trend and direction, we're both bullish. Okay, on the euro and the pound. Aussie dollar, pretty similar here. Short term, definitely looking at a pullback. Okay, but among the three, if you are interested in shorting or kind of taking the counter trend, my personal point of view is euro dollar is the clearest among the three. Euro dollar is definitely one of the better ones as well in terms of the pullback. The room that you can actually capitalize on the pullback. Euro dollar is actually more significant. Okay, so that's on that. Dollar Canadian, we're getting that pullback. Okay, so ideally we continue to see some kind of a correction, okay, towards the zone here around the 50 and 618 pullback. Then that would be a very nice little opportunity for us to look for a sell. Okay, so if I kind of zoom out here on Dollar Canadian, we're looking at the channel structure, right? I think pretty straightforward here. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Okay, so this little consolidation and pullback phase would give us the opportunity to see if we can get one more to the downside. Okay, so this one here, I'm looking out for it as well. Okay, of course, if today you're kind of like looking at a order flow kind of structure perspective, we do have a little bit of a supply zone here, right? Tiny bit of consolidation. The other level here is obviously the top. Okay, of course, if you really strict about that, that's your supply zone as well. But at the same time, we have a fair value gap over here, right? Market imbalance. So some traders would take trades off the fair value gap. You can consider this area here between the 50 and 618 as well with this supply zone. And of course, the ultimate supply zone over here will be this top. Okay. Yeah, so keep an eye on that. Naturally, as long as price remains below this, will still be bearish. Okay, so it can actually pull back here, drops, it can go up a little bit more, drop, it can even go up all the way and retest and drop, right? But as long as price remains below this high, we're looking at bearish bias so far. Okay, the yen side of things had a massive drop last week, right? After last week, we did get this huge drop. Not only on the dollar yen, but across the yen pairs, you can see the yen kind of did a little bit of a strength, okay, last week. So right now we are waiting for the pullback, right? So of course, this drop here broke this structure low. So we're definitely bearish right now, and any sort of a consolidation correction, we'll be expecting more downside. Okay, now obviously for the yen pairs, if you kind of stretch it, you can see we didn't really get much of a major pullback all the while, right? So since here, right, this extension you can see, right, really far off. Perhaps it's time for the market to do a little bit of a consolidation, even pull back towards like 150, 149, very possible, okay? So kind of mentioned like since a couple of like weeks or even months back, okay, stating that I'm just basically waiting for that sign, the confirmation from the market that it wants to reverse. And then I'll be very much interested in the downside, right? So we'll kind of get this as a first clue. Of course, if we can get a corrective pullback, that would be the extra layer of confirmation for us to look for the sell side of things. Okay, so this applies to the yen pairs in general. So this includes like pound yen here, okay, looking for the downside. Odd yen here, looking for the downside as well. Okay, so generally all the yen pairs are pretty much bearish at the moment. Okay, gold, I'm expecting that pullback. Okay, now so this one here, if you drop down to the lower time frame, it's not the clearest opportunity to take the pullback trade. Again, if you want to take a pullback trade, to me, I think euro dollar as of now may be the clearest of all. Gold here, my take is probably just wait for the pullback to complete itself and then you look for the buy. That will be much more of a safer trade. Okay, so again, you can see the channel structure. That's what we're expecting in general. Okay. Yeah, so that's the take on that. If you go over to silver, actually, just very quickly, silver here, if I can update this very quickly, would have an opportunity that we can look for a downside, right? So the structure in silver seems to be a little bit cleaner if you would like to, okay, take it to the downside in the short run. Let me just be a little bit more precise. That would be the area of things. Okay. Yeah, so why I'm saying silver here is because silver actually managed to break this top, okay, and then kind of reverse, right? So kind of like in an idea had a little bit of a crawlish environment. Okay, in the market structure perspective, we call that liquidity sweep, or just a false breakout and then the market reverses. So this actually gives us a high probability of the downside. But for gold itself, it just go back. Okay, we don't really see that, right? It's kind of like an equal high right now. Even if it breaks this, you did not really see that rejection back down. Okay, so silver seems to be a little bit weaker relative to gold, right? So in that idea here, if you're looking at a pullback trade, then silver may be a little bit better in comparison to gold, right? But nonetheless, I think both of this eventually is an upside. Okay, so gold here, that's the take. Crude oil, definitely bearish. We had a very nice little trade here on crude oil on the 4-hour time frame. For those of you who managed to catch it, okay, very clean trade so far. Obviously, this is where you want to shift your stops, protect and trail your targets, etc. But overall, I'm expecting actually a deeper pullback, right? Because crude oil over here has an extended move, again ending off with a very crawlish structure. Very classic break of the previous low, kind of topish formation, break of it, retest, and then that's where we expect that to continue, right? So this is the confirmation I'm talking about, right? You have a topish environment. Okay, the aggressive trade is obviously to trade the breakout to the downside. The more conservative one is to wait for the impulsive break and then wait for the pullback to get involved in it. Okay, now if you did not manage to catch this first wave, this move down here, there's actually an opportunity to re-enter, or look for a re-entry on the lower time frame on H1. Okay, but whether we are able to get this, we really need to see how the market continue to develop. But pretty similar concept over here. We have this break that high, the market pull back. Reverses, right? Not really a pullback. It broke that high, reverses instantly, break this low here. So again, if this pulls back, it gives you that similar model, right? Topish formation, break of this neckline low. Okay, with momentum as a confirmation that any sort of a pullback naturally gives you that setup. Okay, yeah, so that's another one. But again, of course, if the market just keeps going down, then that setup may no longer be valid. Okay, but for now, that's the idea behind crude oil. Okay, S&P 500. I'm expecting some sort of a pullback eventually. I think the market seems to be a little bit more extended already. I would say overextended. Okay, so we can't expect a pullback and then a healthy trend to continue. Always have some sort of a pullback. So I'm waiting for that, right? I think you don't want to be buying it right now. The expectation is if you can get a short-term break of this neckline, pullback, that will be a short-term sell. Right? So that's on S&P. Both of the yen, we can't talk about it already. GBP AUD, we're bullish, right? I think this structure is very, very clear. Bottomish, impulsive break. So any sort of a pullback naturally will look for the buy trade itself. Okay, so clean structure, but need patience, right? You need to wait for the market to pull back. Euro Canadian upside as well, but this one here, again, not the best among the list that I have. We're getting very close to the top of the channel. That's one. The other thing here, of course, if I go to a high time frame, we are eventually still consolidating, right? Whether this is a triangle structure or not, okay? If that's going to be a triangle, then this will be an A, B, C, D, E. One more drop before the break to the upside. Okay, that's very possible as well. So there are a couple of things that may need a little bit more time and see how the market develops. But obviously, right now you don't want to be trading this, right? You don't want to be buying here. You don't want to be selling. Okay, so overall trend direction is bullish, but in terms of like setups, trade ideas, nothing much there. Okay, Bitcoin definitely bullish. I think last week we kind of started to look at it already. This is the futures chart, so we have a gap. Okay, definitely start to look for buy opportunity, right? Any sort of pullback, I think you want to focus on the buy. If you look at this structure here, we have completed potentially that 3-wave. Okay, we have this impulsive move, so any sort of a pullback, naturally, I will be bullish on this. Okay, in fact, I'm definitely looking at opportunities to get involved in it. I'm just waiting for the pullback, and then that will be the setup to get involved in BTC. All right. Okay. So that's on the side of things. Let's just take a very, very quick look at some of this indices over here. Okay, this one probably not the cleanest. We have this extension up here. Okay, so I'm gonna clean up all this here. German DAX, probably nothing much you want to be focusing too much, right? Not the cleanest structure of all right now. FTSE, okay, this is definitely a consolidation. Whether this is gonna be a triangle-ish kind of structure, possibly, but even if it's gonna be a triangle, I think that would be a bearish opportunity at the end of the day, right? Because this is an impulse late, this is a consolidation, is actually a trend continuation pattern, right? So I think this is FTSE, right? FTSE 100 here has an opportunity to look for a bit more downside. Okay, but of course we're not looking at like market crash or what sort of, right? We're just looking at that pullback phase. Okay, from a larger trend perspective, that pullback phase. Okay, A50 here we are looking at. Seems like the market may have started to bounce a little bit. Okay, yeah, I mean this one here not really that confirmation yet. But of course, if this comes down correctively, then we may start to look for upside, right? So that can be your invalidation as of now. Okay, yeah. So I think it's not the most obvious kind of like break. Ideally we want that momentum to follow through and break this, right? Like like the pound alt. Okay, that's what we want. Don't really get that yet, so this one probably want to wait for a bit more clue, right? More confirmation from market. Yeah, Hang Seng more or less the same as the A50. We may or may not have completed that. Whether this is a low, I don't think right now you want to be committing to that yet, right? But I mean, there's a possibility, right? Because this has kind of like broke out of that pro structure. Possibly this can be the low, right? But of course, the confirmation you want to wait for and see is if this pulls back correctively. Okay. Aussie 200, definitely impulsive. I think we are reaching that target soon already, right? So you can see that's a consolidate, that's a triangle, right? So if FTSE is gonna do that, then of course you can see that's a continuation, right? So Aussie here is previously impulse, triangle, and then the continuation, right? Yeah, so we're reaching the target pretty much soon. Okay, so equalate 1:1. Switzerland side of things, kind of broke out of this, so I need to update the analysis a little bit. Okay, this one here, okay, we still see the divergence, so probably wave 5 is not completed. But we are definitely seeing massive divergence across board. Potentially what can happen over here is we are still in development of wave 5, as you know, potentially a diagonal kind of like structure here. Okay, so my take is probably don't want to be too aggressive in buying, but eventually at some point in time, if this 5 wave is completed, there's a good chance we'll get a pullback, then only the upside, right? So if the pullback is going to be starting, then one area to look out for is definitely wave 4 territory. Okay, but I think right now it's a little bit too early to really talk about that pullback trade. Okay, so I think generally index, probably the clearest one that you can focus on would likely be the FTSE. Okay, and then of course A50 and Hang Seng here, you can wait for that corrective pullback. If you can get that, then that's an opportunity to look for a trade. Okay, other than that, the rest probably nothing much. Right. Yeah, so generally those are the few updates from my side, right? I think crude oil here, as it continues to drop, probably this H1 setup will need to readjust itself. Okay. Yeah, but this trade here is moving very, very nicely at this moment. Okay, yeah, so generally that's the update for me for this week. There are definitely some opportunities as I highlighted, right? Hopefully that's clear. Hopefully again, this video here, this live stream here, give you some insights into the market. Okay, so that's all for me. All the best for the week. Okay, and I'll see you guys in the respective sessions throughout, and of course we'll see you guys in the next week's session too. Okay, so that's all the best, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, good night.